You're listening to Alcoholics Alive, where recovered members of Alcoholics Anonymous share their experience on how they live AA as a way of life. None of our participants get paid or speak for AA. Here are your hosts, Shank and Wayne. Hey, welcome out there. If you listened to last week's episode, we had a pretty, I don't know what the word would be, Shank, but
Lively discussion.
lively discussion. We had a very lively discussion with Dee, and she kept referencing what she called item J. So if you listened and you were curious as to what she's talking about the upcoming General Service Conference agenda items. They came out recently, and they're under the Literature Trustees Committee agenda. There is an item in there called item J, where they're looking at the sponsorship pamphlet, and they're going to reword some things in there or put some additional, I guess I would call it instructions on how to sponsor people, and it's fairly controversial. I won't go into it, but if you're interested in knowing more about it, you can contact your delegate and ask them about sponsors or the sponsorship pamphlet item J, or you can email us or hit us up on the gram, and we will send you the item J that talks about what they're planning to do. So there's that. We're excited to have our guest on today. Our guest comes from a long ways from us, just down the street in Apex, North Carolina. Julia, how are you?
I'm good. I'm
Good to
doing
have you.
great.
Good to have you. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you guys for having me. I'm super excited to be here. My name is Julia, and I'm an alcoholic. My home group is the There's a Solution group in Cary, North Carolina. So, I don't have the experience of not knowing what Alcoholics Anonymous was. I was very aware of what Alcoholics Anonymous was, from kind of a young age, it being in my family or being around friends of my family. But I was not aware what alcoholism was. I wasn't aware of anything that was done in Alcoholics Anonymous or why these people had to get sober, but I did have, exposure to AA. Um, I didn't start drinking until probably 16 or 17, which seems to be old in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. So, I didn't drink for that long. I think I got sober, or I came into AA at 22 years old. And from the day I started drinking when I went to college to the day that I stopped, I wanted to black out every single time that I drank. My drinking got really unmanageable really quickly. I started, to lose friends and to isolate myself from my family. I was putting myself in situations that were unsafe for me and others, but I didn't care. And how I got to AA, I did not think alcohol was my problem. Um, you know, I thought that it was the boyfriend that I had, and he had a problem. And so obviously he had a problem. So he made me have a problem. And, my friends were graduating college because they were better at school than me, not because I didn't show up to class because I couldn't stop drinking long enough to go to class. I just needed a new job, and my work environment was not good. And you would drink if you had the work environment that I did, and you would drink if these things happened to you. And my life was just so horrible. um and so how I was introduced to AA, I had a moment, the first moment that I had had since I started drinking, where I was in a relationship and this person asked me, why do you drink every night, or something along those lines? Like, do you have to do this every night? And I had a moment where I wondered why I did drink every single night. And that was not the first comment that had been made to me like that. It was just the first time that I had ever like heard it, I guess. My parents had made comments about my drinking, my siblings had made comments about my drinking, but I just thought I was having a normal experience and that at some point, um, I guess I would be able to control it or I would grow out of it or something along those lines. But that just never happened. And so I continued to move houses and relationships and burn things to the ground until I eventually had $0 and zero hope and no aspirations in life. And um I looked in a mirror one day and I don't know why it was different than me looking in a mirror any other day, but I saw something that wasn't me. I saw a human who was not Julia, and I didn't know what to do from there, and I knew I needed help. Um, but I didn't know with what at that point. Like I still just had this delusion that my life was just a mess and it was always going to be a mess and I wanted to die. For probably the last 6 months of my drinking, I would black out, but it would be a certain I'm pretty sure I was just talking to Susie about this not too long ago. Maybe a couple days ago, but I would drink a fifth of vodka and pass out and pee all over myself and I would say, well, I can't drink that vodka again. That
Mhm.
vodka was the problem.
Mhm.
Um,
For
and
sure.
I'm able to look back on that stuff now and see how funny that is. But at the time, I genuinely thought I needed to switch to wine. So, you know, I say I went backwards, but I just realized what had happened, kind of. I realized I had a problem with something. I didn't know what it was, but I knew who to call. And so I called that person and they took me to whatever a treatment center. I was there for like 7 days or something like that. Um, and when I got out, I went to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, and it kind of went from there. That is, yep, that's what happened.
Okay. Well, we're glad you got sober. You and Shank both like to black out.
Oh yeah.
That's
Man,
right.
God, well, not me. Now I'm glad I blacked out sometimes because I don't want to remember, but it scared me blacking out. Y'all are bad drinkers. Yeah. Mm, mm. Well, thanks for being with us. Thanks for that intro. Shank, what's our topic today?
Our topic today comes from the Grapevine and compilation book, Young and Sober Stories from AA Grapevine. And this is the little blurb. It says, what is it like to stop drinking at an early age? Stories by AA members who got sober in their teens, 20s, and 30s. Include stories about fellowship, young people's groups, service, and more. In this collection of grapevine stories about the joys and challenges of getting sober early, AA members talk about recognizing their disease even though their drinking may have only lasted a few years. Written by members who got sober in their teens, 20s, and 30s, the articles in this book are about growing up young in AA, finding ways to connect when feeling different, getting involved in service, and learning how to live a sober life joyously.
Hmm.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Teens, 20s, and 30s, in
So they're
case you all
calling
were wondering.
30s are young, huh?
Love it.
Mm.
So, my first question, because I do know that you, Jerry, also got sober at a young age.
As did you.
Um, Julia, when did you realize that you needed help with your alcoholism? I think you kind of briefly described that, but did you just come in and get sober and you've been sober ever since?
No, definitely not. That was not my experience. I touched on it a little bit earlier, but I did not know what an alcoholic was. Like I knew that getting sober was something that people did when they had trouble stopping drinking, but that's all I knew. And so when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, and being young was a part of that, what the very first meeting that I went to was a young people's meeting, the very first one. And I think it makes sense to people who want to help you. They want to take you to a meeting where you might feel, I don't know, like you fit in or something. I'm not sure what the goal is there, but I still did not realize that I was an alcoholic, because really what my focus became being around all these young people was I wasn't focused on sobriety at all. I made a bunch of friends, or what I thought were friends, but really like I was attracted to people who were like doing things completely not aligned with spiritual principles at all. And that wasn't a really big focus. I didn't buy a big book. I wasn't given a big book. um Maybe I was. I don't really remember. I shouldn't say that because I don't know. But I didn't open it. That's for sure. Um, it wasn't explained to me what a home group was. All of the things that I know today that are a huge part of my sobriety, I didn't know anything about them. So even, you know, I can say that I realized that I had a problem with my alcoholism when I went on for, I probably made it 6 or 7 months. And the young people scene was where I wanted to be. I would say that I was dry. I wasn't sober. I wasn't a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I hadn't worked any steps. And I was about 4 or 5 months dry, sober, whatever. And I wanted to die. Um, and that's when I realized I had no idea what alcoholism was. I didn't I I thought that the whole point of me coming to AA was to stop drinking. I thought that I was supposed to feel better once I stopped and once I put down the alcohol. It wasn't explained to me that I had a spiritual malady. It wasn't explained to me, that I had to do these certain things and change everything. And um, so I really was still just confused. I wanted to die in sobriety. I thought I was really trying Alcoholics Anonymous. So I thought I was an outright mental defect and I wasn't an alcoholic and this just wasn't going to work for me. Like I remember telling my mom probably at like 4 months that I just need to be shipped away to California or Florida. Please make it a nice place if you can, but I need to be shipped away because I can't, I'm crazy. Like I just thought I was crazy. And so I went back out. Long story short, shocker. I went back out and I ended up in a hospital bed and I had a moment inside of myself and that is when I realized that I needed help with my alcoholism. That is when I realized that on my own I'm going to drink again. On my own, I'm a bad person. On my own, I make really bad decisions. And so even though I didn't understand necessarily what alcoholism was at that point, I had sat in enough meetings to kind of understand that like what happened to me was I woke up that day and had zero intention of doing anything other than staying sober. And that wasn't the case. I didn't wake up with this plan. Um, I have a mental obsession and a physical allergy, which I know today, but I did not. That was the moment where I got really, really scared and I realized I need help, but I still didn't even know what that looked like. I just knew that
Yeah.
I had a problem.
Yeah. I didn't realize I had alcoholism until, I got 12 step by a member of AA and started basically somebody reading the book to me or reading the book myself. Because I didn't know what was wrong with me. I did reach out for help that like changed my life probably 7 or 8 months before I actually got sober, but I had no knowledge of alcoholism or Alcoholics Anonymous or 12 steps. I really still kind of in my back of my mind thought that alcohol was a solution and really thought that if I could just change things in my life that things would be different. I had no clue that the alcoholism was really what was causing most of that. So when I was, one day I just gave up and asked for help, and I really didn't know what I was asking help for. And a guy came in and talked to me, and he described his drinking and his life, and I didn't fully understand all of it, but I identified with with what he was saying, and I knew that whatever he had, I had it. Come to find out it was alcoholism. But prior to that, I still would have told you, man, it was somebody else's fault, and if things would have, You know, if I was given a better hand at life, things would be different. And if people would just get off my back, everything would be all right. So to answer the question, I didn't really fully know it until a member of Alcoholics Anonymous helped me understand it. And I had just turned 22 years old when that happened. So I guess that's when I realized it. Shank. So I was 22 when I got sober. How old were you when you got sober, Shank?
I was 24. So, I mean,
24. We're all just a bunch of
That's young.
youngins.
Yeah.
And I knew, listen, when the first AA meeting I was ever in was in a train depot in one of the smallest counties in North Carolina, I think.
I love that
And
meeting.
at that time, there was a week time from where I'd committed my crimes to when I went to treatment. And I can't tell you if it was the first day I was there or I don't know if I'd been there a few days before they took us to an AA meeting, but I knew immediately, like I don't know, you learn a lot, I guess, of knowledge when you go to treatment, but uh I can't tell you what they said. I don't know what kind of meeting it was. I know that they didn't tailor it to a quote newcomer. I know they were just sharing their experience, but as soon as the men in that meeting were sharing, I was like, oh, whatever it is they have, I have, and whatever they're doing is what I need to do. Because I,
Hmm.
at that time, didn't know how long I was going to go to prison or what was going to happen. I asked God for help and I've never wanted to drink since then, but I never had the thought, I knew something was wrong at that point. I was told early on though, like, hey, the fact that you committed crimes and you're going to prison, that doesn't mean anything.
Yep.
That's not going to keep you sober. Fear may sober you up for a little while, but that's not going to be the case. Although all of my family think that that is the reason why I don't drink today. They're just like, oh yeah, I mean that was really horrible, and then you quit drinking, and for a while I'd be like, I'm a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous, like I do
Yeah.
other things, but anyway,
It's a good
I
reason to
I
not
give
drink, but it won't keep you sober.
no, not if you're an alcoholic.
That's
I
right.
mean,
Yeah.
and I was in full-blown alcoholism when that happened. And so when I heard those men talking about whatever they were talking about and what the solution was, I was like, oh, I'm in the right place. I know I have what they have. All right, here's my next question for you guys.
What you got?
How soon after you got sober did you join a young people's meeting? Did you make it your home group?
Do you want me
Julia?
to answer?
JC, what you
Okay.
got?
Um, that's a pretty funny question. So, uh, I have never had a young people's meeting as my home group to answer the question. But I did go to a lot of young people's meetings when I first was trying to be in AA. And I say that with an asterisk because I actually did make a young people's group my home group, but I didn't know what a home group was. I didn't know what that meant. And so I made a young people's meeting. I asked somebody, I remember this like it was yesterday, asking somebody what a home group was. And it was a meeting that you go to the business meeting if you can. That is what
Hmm.
I was told. And, that might be accurate for some. It might. Like, there's, whatever. That's not what my home group is to me today. But at the time, was like, okay. So they asked who wanted to be a member, and I raised my hand. And then I never went to a business meeting and never did anything else. And, um, I never even really went. I probably went to that meeting twice a month. And I think I may have actually shown up to one business meeting and then got a service position and then got scared and quit that service position because I didn't know what that meant. Um, so I say all of that to say that I have never officially been a member at a young people's meeting. But I do attend them. Even today, I actually do go to some young people's meetings because I feel like there are young people there who could find a solution if there's someone there to help them and they're willing and they're ready to stop drinking. So
Yeah, it's probably a good place to find people to help. if you go in there trying to find somebody to help. I I'm telling you, when I got sober, if I had joined or gone to a young people meeting, I'd have three or four baby mamas or mama babies. What's the term? Baby mamas?
With baby mama. Baby mama.
I'd have two or three baby mamas running around and probably six or seven kids.
And a
I
lot of
mean,
people do.
Mm-hmm.
I understand. That's why I'm glad I was spared that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I mean, I've attended young people meetings and even some conventions, and one of the coolest things I ever did was actually go to the the I don't know what you call it, the dance at the International Convention in San Antonio. It was like a rave. It was awesome. Um, but but anyway, yeah, when I got sober, I mean, I was told that the fact that I was young, and I was trying to remember, I was probably the youngest guy in the group. There were a few other people that came in soon after me that that joined the group that were a little younger than me, but it was never like a big deal to anybody. I mean, no one. I mean, you would get some of that. I spilled more than you drank, and oh, you're so lucky that you should be so lucky, or you're so fortunate you got sober when you did. But I mean, you would get some of that from people, but folks in the group that I was in, I was told we all recover together. We recover the same, and it doesn't matter, what your age or anything is. If you want to get better, the steps and the book and trying to help people is the solution. So I personally have never joined a young people group, and as a matter of fact, I mean, if you've listened to the podcast, you know my view on some of that stuff. I mean, I was told that those specialized groups are fine for some, but they're not necessary to recover. So, but I like going to some young people meetings now every once in a while just to watch the show. I mean, it's the last one I went to with JC. I mean, it was epic in terms of what
Y'all
happened and
caused a
what
little
took
chaos
place.
there, didn't you?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we did,
It was
but
another member with us. It was his first young people's meeting, I think, ever. It was pretty great. I
yeah,
um I think I also have talked a lot about when I first came into Alcoholics Anonymous and how I just didn't stay sober and went to young people's meetings and didn't do anything. But, I have a really similar experience to what Jerry had after I had that experience where I ended up in the hospital. And, um, at the time I was attending a lot of young people's meetings, but I was also attending, my current home group. And there was people that would try to walk up to me and help me. I think Susie was one of them. And I would just be like crying or who knows what doing. And I just wanted no part of anyone trying to actually help me. Like I just, similar to what you said, like I was interested in potentially getting a boyfriend or multiple, and that was it.
yeah.
Um, I didn't want any woman to walk up to me and ask me if I wanted help. Like that wasn't, you know. Um,
You just wanted some attention.
yeah. And you will find that there. Like
You
I
will.
think, what you said at my current home group, there's so many different types of people, and no one has ever, not one time, made a good or bad comment about my age, honestly. It's as if me being young doesn't matter. I have formed some of the most meaningful relationships with people in sobriety who are 20 plus years older than me. And it just doesn't even get mentioned. It just is not a factor. Um, when working the steps, I wasn't asked how I felt about being young in AA, not one time. I was asked if I wanted to get sober, and I was asked if I was willing to go to any length to do that, and if I was willing to help other people.
Yeah.
Um, and it wasn't, am I willing to help other young people? It was, am I willing to help other people? So that was my experience.
All I remember, I went to some young people's meetings, just because that's who was driving me to the meeting, which just eventually was like, I just can't do it. So, but I did go to this meeting. I don't know that it was technically a young people's meeting. It was in the basement of this church, and the group would split up, and you had like the newcomer meeting, and then you had the regular meeting. And I remember being told that I was to go to the newcomer meeting, so I did. And this is when I got out of prison, so I had like a year and a half of sobriety. And all I remember about this is that they would, ask if you have 30 days, raise your hand and share. And I thought that was really weird, but also everyone chanted the steps together, and I did not know the steps like that. And I could not read them on the wall. And I was like, I will never come back here because it's a whole bunch of young people in here chanting the steps together, talking about the craziest things I've ever heard. And then they forced me to share. And I had a bad attitude about it. I'm sure everyone who
Oh, yeah.
listens to this
Shocker!
podcast or both of y'all are very surprised, but like
They
I had
force you to
such a bad
share.
attitude about it. They forced me. They
Oh,
like
that's
pointed
the
at me. They were like,
worst.
"How long have you been sober? You haven't
Yeah,
raised your hand."
I'm familiar. That's awful.
It was horrible.
Oh my
Hated it.
goodness.
It was horrible.
Hey,
Is
now if you go ahead.
Go ahead.
If you're out there listening, we're not against young people's groups. That's not what we're saying. So, um, I know some people that have gotten sober in young people groups, and they do fine. But just put that out there. What's your next question, Shank?
Is being sober at a young age, what you expected, Julia?
Um, I think there is something to be said for when you come in, you know, when you come in young, you can't stop your mind from thinking, do I really have to be sober the rest of my life? I'm so young. I don't even know if it was I'm so young, but it was, I had a lot of friends at the time who were able to drink normally. So I think, you know, when I was 22 years old, like the bar scene and, us all being at apartments and partying together was still a thing. Um, and there was a lot of people that I almost envied when I came in here because I didn't understand why they could drink and, they could stop and have a child and they could get married and they could get a degree and I couldn't do any of those things. Um, so I think I remember having thoughts of like everyone's gonna be able to drink at their wedding and I'm not. First of all, I was not getting married anytime soon. Um, like, but those thoughts do happen, and I bet that they happen more, to the young person, and they did happen to me. Um, in terms of expectations, like I think I was just really confused and kind of blown away when I came in that there was a life out there that you could just not think about alcohol, period. Like I didn't have to think about not drinking all the time. That is what blew my mind. I don't know that I necessarily had an expectation as a young person of like what my life was supposed to look like because if I'm being honest, I didn't want to live anymore. Like I didn't think I was going to make it to 25. So I don't to answer your question, life sober is great and better than
Yep.
any expectation I could have had. Like, and I heard that in the room meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous a lot of, if you were to say what you wanted when you first came in here out of Alcoholics Anonymous, like you're going to sell yourself short. And that has been the case for me. But just because of, this freedom that I get to experience that I didn't even know existed. I don't think that had anything to do with my age, or I don't know that I actually just answered your question, but I just,
That was a great answer.
yeah, I don't know that the expectation was really much at all. But it was exceeded, whatever it was.
What'd you expect, Jay Wayne?
You know what? My brain was fried when I got here, as it still is, obviously, as you two know. The I didn't have any expectations. I was just, you know what? That's probably not true. What I was hoping for was when I got sober was to get a car And to get my wife back, we got married young, and she left. And when I first got sober, I expected that she was just going to come back, and she did not. And I was extremely, looking back on it, resentful and obsessed with all that. So my expectation was I did get a car. A guy let me borrow a car, and I paid him. My first sober car was an 82 Grand Prix, and the door wouldn't shut on it all the way, and the window wouldn't roll all the way up. So when it rained, you just got wet, and I paid $250 for it.
Nice.
Jeez.
Nice.
And I was glad to have it. And I would pick up guys at the halfway house and take them to meetings in that car, and was actually pretty grateful for it. So I mean, so my expectation early on was just to get a job and get a car and my wife to come back. And like you hear a lot in AA, I mean, all that happened and more. I mean, looking back on it, I've had a great life. Even those first couple of years, I was scared to death of life and of people. And you know, truth be told, not a whole lot of things went my way or how I planned them, but I stayed sober through it, and was able to maintain a little level of gratitude through all of it. So, Alcoholics Anonymous has exceeded my expectations, Shank.
I feel like I didn't really have expectations
Yeah,
until several years in, honestly. Like, I mean, I was never suicidal, but I had a pretty rough childhood, adolescence, whatever you want to say. So by the time I started drinking, I was just like, this is solving a lot of the things that really sucked, and I'll figure it out later. I didn't have any plans for
yeah,
life. So after getting sober, I got to learn how to, like, I don't have a credit score. I'd never had a credit card. I'd never, like, there were so many things that were just so outside of the realm of things that I thought I was capable of doing. And not for, my fifth grade education, not for lack of, I just like was so fearful and didn't know and didn't care about anything in my life, quite frankly. So once I was sober for a few years, I started really thinking that I could have a good life. And like my first car was $2,500, but I feel like maybe from your first car to my first car, that's probably about the same amount, I think. And that wasn't that long ago, 6 or 7 years ago. But I was so happy, like you said, I was so
what are you
happy to
saying?
be able to help
You
people.
you trying to say I'm old, Shank? Or
No,
that was just
I'm just
oh,
saying that that is probably the
okay?
same amount.
It's
Um,
probably similar.
yeah.
Yeah,
And I was happy to have it.
yeah.
Like there's just very basic things. I didn't expect them. They exceeded my expectations. Now I've been sober a little longer now, so I don't know. I feel like there were a few years in there where I was like, I mean, come on, man. Like I see all the stuff everyone else is talking about and like
Yeah.
what's going on here.
Throw
But
some favor my way, right?
right, come on, man. I've been doing this pretty good for a while, but um, luckily I have people in my life who keep me on track. So the expectations didn't come for a while for me, I guess.
Yeah, I think as you stay sober, I mean, we all probably come here pretty dead and don't have a whole lot of aspirations or goals. I think the program helps us to have that, to have some hope and some dreams and some, goals of what we want to do with our life. We don't have them while we're drinking, that's for sure.
Mm,
Mm-mm,
at least
Yeah,
I didn't.
mm-mm.
no.
How has being involved in service affected your sobriety, JC?
I think it saved my life. I along the same lines, I didn't, and all of this stuff, it's not, I don't know and can't say if I had walked into a different meeting than a young people's meeting that I would be sober, because I really don't believe that that's true. I don't think I was probably ready to stop drinking regardless. Um but when I fell into a home group that was extremely involved in service, and I was being sponsored by somebody that was involved in service, and it was almost painted to me as like a non-negotiable. Like, this is just what you do. Um, and what I mean by that is my sponsor told me that I had to clean coffee cups. And that was the first form of service that I did. And I hated it. I did not think that I had to do that or should have to do that. And you know, people started to teach me humility through service. Um, and I had to ask a sponsor what the word humility meant. I didn't know I legitimately did not know what that word meant. And I had this thought that when you walked into an AA meeting, that all the chairs were just set up like that. I don't know. I don't know where. I guess I just didn't think. I was so selfish. Like, I just did not think beyond that. I didn't really even care how they got there. I just knew that there was a chair for me to sit in. Um, but then it was suggested to me that if I could, that I start showing up early when I can. And I did. And I realized that people just set up the chairs for the meeting. And they don't broadcast that they set up those chairs for the meeting. They just do it because they're being of service to the group. So there were a lot of little things and very early on when I got sober that were pretty much ingrained in me. Um, you make it early if you can, you stay after the meeting to help clean up. Just the greeting people at the door, shaking people's hands, and I don't know that all of this stuff was told to me to do. Like, it was shown to me. People said, this is what we do. And I don't even think they said you have to do it. I think they said you should probably do it if you want to stay sober. Um, and so that's what service started to look like. And then once I finished the steps, it started to look like me sponsoring other people, but also, um, I started taking meetings into treatment. That was one of the first things I started to do was take meetings into treatment facilities really early on. I think I had a couple months sober and I was terrified. Like, I don't know why I was so terrified. I guess I thought they were gonna keep me in there because I was still nuts. Like, I was very crazy. I would still call my sponsor and scream and cry and all the things. And I had so much drama. Jerry called me high drama for the first like year of my sobriety.
OMG.
Like, I just
Oh.
had all the reactions to all the things. But when I went into that treatment center, the woman, she remembered me. And just the look on her face of like, oh my God, someone actually got sober. Like, what she does is thankless. And I don't know if any of the women that night I talked to stayed sober, but I realized that service was how I was gonna stay sober. Um, and so I continued to do that and I continued to do that on a daily basis. And I was told to get a service position at my home group, and I did that. And I was grapevine rep. And early on, what that did for me, my group at the time, we did announcements. We did announcements at the end of the meeting, and one of them was the grapevine announcement. And so I had to be there. In my mind, it was like, I have to be here so people don't know, or people will know. People will know if I'm not here. And it's like was that really the case? Probably not. People did not care at all, but it taught
Oh
me how
no,
to
we
keep a
cared.
commitment.
100%.
We got a tracker on how many times you were there and how many times you were not.
That's what I thought. I knew that, and I knew that I had to keep a commitment for the first time, in my life. I learned how to keep a commitment, and when I said I was going to be somewhere, that I had to be there. And that was not. I didn't care when I was drinking about being somewhere. When I said I was going to be there, most of the time that was not the case. And I've been involved in service ever since I got sober, and I all the people that I look up to, I guess, or kind of want the freedom and peace that they have in their life, I see them being of service, in all different ways. So it has probably been, that being of service, having a sponsor and a home group are probably the things that keep me sober. So
What was that? Those pins a couple of people were wearing at that conference we were at this past weekend.
Service is the secret.
there's some
yes,
there's some shrapnel for you right there, Shane. Add
Mhm.
that to our
Or
list. So no, that's
yeah,
it. Yeah,
that's what
I
I'm
think
service
you're
is the
right.
secret.
You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's probably a good term. Service is a secret, but it shouldn't be a secret.
I was about to say, I don't know that
I
it's
mean,
a secret.
no, it's not a secret. I
I
mean, it
thought
made
the way that pin looked, I was like, are you the police or
it looked like it did look like a badge, didn't it? Like
are you a
a
cop?
sheriff. It looked like a sheriff badge or deputy badge.
Mhm.
Mm,
Well, service has certainly made all the difference to me. And as JC was talking, I'm really glad that when I got sober, no one said, "Hey, you're too young to go with us to the mental health to the meeting at the mental health ward," or "You're too young to go into the prison," or you're not quite polished enough to make the coffee or to sit the meeting up. I mean, looking back on it, people just included me. They just said, "Come along," and I did. And I mean, I was immediately like taken to we used to take a meeting to a detox on Sunday nights. I got involved in prison work. I was only sober about 3 months, best I can remember, maybe a little longer than that. And of course, the home group stuff, getting there early and hanging out and sitting up. And, I started sponsoring people very, very early in sobriety and was just told that that's what you do. If you want to stay sober and to be free, that you got to give back. And it's the best remedy for staying away from a drink. And it's the best remedy to combat selfishness and self-centeredness and even fear, because I was consumed with fear and doing stuff with people and being involved in service. It really helped me walk through all that. So I guess it's the secret. It's the secret to
Basically same for
sobriety.
me.
Yeah.
I was
Yep.
not that happy about it. Honestly,
Yeah.
I was not just like excited. I was told before I went to prison, like, hey, um, we're all going to be greeting at this conference coming up, and you are too. So here's what you need to wear, and blah blah blah. Here's what you're going to be responsible for. And I was just like, well, I'm trying to save some money because like I was also told that my family was not going to bankroll me while I was incarcerated. And you just probably don't understand that I'm going to prison. Like anyway, I did do it and I ended up meeting, several people that I still know today and still do service with today. And now I'm like on a committee that helps with that. I don't know how much I help really, but that helps with that conference. And so, it just is like, I'm glad that people told me what I needed to do, and they weren't just like, okay, well, then don't do it. Those people knew what was best for me when I didn't have any idea.
Yeah.
My idea was work as much as possible. I'll probably show up to this meeting a little bit and, figure it out later, I guess. Like, y'all just don't understand. I'm a little bit worse. Got some consequences.
Yep. Yeah. It sometimes sounds like probably when I just said what I did, it probably sounded like I did all that enthusiastically and willingly and just and loved it. But no, not not always.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
me neither.
Well, and what makes
And
it fun too, I think, is like when those people got to know me when I was so early in sobriety, like, they saw that I was willing. I may not have had the best attitude at that time. You probably didn't know I had such a bad attitude about it, but um, and those people have looped me into so many things over the years. And then at some point I was like, okay, well, even if this isn't going to be the most fun service opportunity there ever has been, like I'm going to be with the same 20 people because it's 20 people that do everything for everything. And like I really enjoy at least 15 of those people. And I'm gonna get to hang out with them and it's gonna be great. So, you know.
You know, the interesting thing about all this is that the Big Book nailed this back in 1938, 39.
Hmm.
Sometimes you'll hear people talk about young people like it's something new,
Mm.
or oh, we're so grateful all these young people are getting sober. Well, it's nothing new, right? I mean, it says it in the Big Book on page 33 that was written or published in 1939 that young people may be encouraged by this man's experience to think they can stop as he did on their own willpower. And that's talking about that dude that retired. What was his? I don't know if he had a name in the book.
Is that
We
carpet
doubt if
slippers?
carpet slippers in a bottle. We
Hmm.
doubt if many of them can do it because none will really want to stop, and hardly one of them, because of the peculiar mental twist already acquired, will find he can win out. Now listen to this. Several of our crowd, so they're talking about the first 100 members of AA. Several of our crowd, men of 30 or less, had been drinking only a few years, but they found themselves as helpless as those who'd been drinking 20 years. So there were people sober under the age of 30 in 1939. And here, listen to this. And you two are in double trouble
I
because
know
you're
what you're
young,
about to read.
because you're young and female.
Nope.
To be gravely affected, one does not necessarily have to drink a long time, nor take the quantity some of us have. This is particularly true of women.
Hmm.
Potential female alcoholics often turn into the real thing and are gone beyond recall in a few years.
Yep, yep.
So,
There you
yeah,
go.
so see, nothing's changed.
I remember reading that, and actually that helped me a lot. What you just
Yes.
read was so powerful to me. Like when I was willing to actually try and get sober, I don't remember if I read it on my own or if someone read it to me, but I read the young people part and then I read the woman part and I was like, "Oh, I'm right where
Mhm.
I'm supposed to
Yep.
be."
Yep.
For real.
Mhm.
Yeah, that helped me a lot.
Why it's so important to read the book and maybe even read it with somebody that has experience with it. So we're young, sober, and free right now. Shank, what about and just for the record, I'm not into AA swag anymore, but I used to have a bumper sticker on my car that said young, sober, and free.
No, you did
Did you
not.
really?
Yep, I did. I hate to admit that.
You have to find a photo of that immediately.
I want
Uh,
one.
Oh,
yes.
now just there'll be one on your car.
You want the bump? You
Easy
want
does
to?
it.
Oh, it's coming. Get ready. I don't know who makes those and puts them out, but they're coming. All right, Shank, you want to move on to meeting shrapnel?
All right, we have arrived at meeting shrapnel, which is our segment of lore, myth, and sayings frequently heard in AA. So our first meeting shrapnel is push, which is pray until something happens. Have you ever heard that one, JC?
No. No, I've never heard. No one says that.
They-
No one
yes, they do.
says that.
Yes.
Oh. How about
Didn't
you,
somebody
Jerry?
didn't somebody say it at the home group?
They did.
They
Yeah,
did.
didn't in the talk.
Mm-hmm.
Or
Maybe I wasn't there.
It was a while ago.
it might have been in their share.
This was something that I picked up
This
from
was
the home
said at a
group.
meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Pray
Am I supposed to
until
say what I
something.
think about it or what?
Yeah, what do you think?
Well, yeah, what do you think about it, JC?
Pray until something happens. Well, I think if I did that, I would be drinking because I usually have to pray and then do something. So I'm not sure how I feel about that.
Well, it's probably good instruction. You know, just keep praying, but what gets me is is that an acronym? Push? Is that what you would call that? Push. Push it real good. Pray until something happens. So why not just say, hey, keep praying? Or, push. So if you just said push in a meeting, is somebody gonna know what that means?
Well, no one ever just says it. They say it was like, whatever, push, pray until something happens.
Oh,
I
my
prayed to
goodness.
God, the grumpy old dudes.
The grumpy old dudes.
I hope that someone
Hmm.
says that now because I've never heard it.
Do you want to keep it or scrap it?
Scrap.
I'm scrapping it. Shane?
It's out of here. It's scrapped.
It's, JC, you got to start using it though at least one time. Mix it in with one of your shares. All right?
Okay.
Just blend it right in.
That's not a hard one to do that with, I think.
That's true. All right, our second meeting shrapnel is whom I choose to call God.
Okay. I have said that. Am I supposed to defend myself?
Listen, you do say it.
But I say it for a reason.
Okay.
Should I say that reason?
Yeah, let's hear it.
Well, sometimes I think that not everybody calls their higher power God, which is something that I have been taught in Alcoholics Anonymous, that not everybody has to call their higher power God. So I just think it's like respectful.
It's respectful to God,
No, to other people.
to the agnostic.
Yes, I guess so. Or the young person. I don't know.
Bringing it full circle.
All right.
Oh man, this is one that's been around forever.
I think
And-
I've heard this the entire time I've been sober. Like,
oh,
for sure.
for sure. Yeah, it's one of those things, kind of like in the rooms. People say it a lot, but you don't even like realize it or pick up on it because I think it's so commonly used. But yeah, I love it. Now, JC, so I listened to one of your talks a few weeks ago when we went down to Southern Pines, and you kicked your talk off with it after you introduced yourself. You said something about you were grateful to your higher power, whom you choose to call God. But I mean, okay, who cares? I mean,
Yes.
all right.
I used to say the rooms of AA until one time I heard you say something about I'm never.
Oh, yeah. I mean, why? I just don't know why people have to.
Well, if
say
you
it.
already said higher power, why not just roll
Why do you
from
have to
there?
talk about what you call it? Yeah.
That's
Well,
true.
because you want to clarify that it's God.
I'm talking about God, but you don't have to. Just
Yeah.
But I guess if
Yeah.
you think about it the other way, it's like, what if someone didn't call their higher power God and just said whatever they called their higher power? That would be weird.
Well,
My
people
higher
do
power,
that.
whom I call.
Whom I choose to call Fred or something.
Well,
We
the
know
one dude-
someone that does that.
Remember the one guy in our group used to use the term Odin, whom
That's
I choose to call Odin.
That's right.
I'm like, well, I like Thor better. Yeah.
Well, what do you think? You want to keep it? You want to scrap it?
I want to keep it. Clearly.
Good call. I'm scrapping it.
Oh,
Scrapping
snap.
All right, Shank.
All right. So should I make the decision or should we throw it out to the listeners?
That's your call.
I'm
You're the-
scrapping it. It's out of here.
Nice. All right, JC. You got to stop
Never want to hear
using
you
it.
say it again.
I'm never going to say it again. Never.
All right. Our third meeting shrapnel is it works if you work it. Work, work, work.
Oh man.
Okay.
We could do a whole segment on shrapnel from young people meetings.
Yes, that is
But,
one.
but go ahead, JC. What's your thoughts on this one?
The jing. So
You've used it
jingle.
before.
No, I have not. No, well, I just have gone to so many meetings that they do it. So like when they say work, 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 I don't know why. It
What?
just creates anger inside of me. I don't know.
What'd you
But-
call it? A jingle?
Yes, that's what it is. It is a jingle. It is a jingle. Scrap. I know we're not
So-
voting yet, but
You going in quick on the scrap on that one. So you don't like it?
no.
Hmm.
Do you like it?
Well, I'm contemplating it.
You know what I really didn't
Yeah.
like, and it wasn't just a young people's meetings, but when I was newly sober the first couple of years, let's say, I was always anticipating what other stuff people were gonna say. And I'm like, okay, well, this one does work, work, work. This one is like, it works if you work it and you're worth it. And the next one is like, and I'm just like, oh God, and am I gonna be standing next to the person that's gonna like almost pull my arm out of my socket from also like doing
At
the
the end of-
arm thing with it?
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
It's awful.
listen, I just thought it was culty. Okay, I still do. I'm like, this is why people
Yeah.
think this is a cult.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
well,
keep coming back. It works if you work it. Work, work, work. Or keep coming back. It works if you work it and you live it every day. Hey,
Yeah.
how about that one? You ever heard that one?
no. There's
Yeah,
a lot of variations of that one though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't think the jingles are necessary, and to me it kind of takes away from the meaning of things, and it cheapens our message.
Well, what is it, and how do you work it? And does that imply you only do it one time? And I just have a lot of follow-up questions.
Yeah, so these are good questions, Shank. So JC, answer some of these for us. So is it, since Shank hasn't been to a young people meeting in forever, and I go, but I don't pay much attention to the jingles. What you went to one last week, probably. So
Yes.
when do they say this?
Mostly at the end.
Okay.
It's actually calmed down a little bit. The one that I have specifically been going to for a while goes in waves. It depends on, if there's a lot of people there that are used to that jingle or chant or whatever, then it'll get going. But if there's only like one or two people doing it, then it just kind of dies down for a little bit. So right now we're in a time where it's not really happening that much.
Nice.
But it happens at the end. Like
At the end.
after the Lord's Prayer, after the closing, after everything, it's when you're holding hands. It's like Susie said, then people start shaking your hand and say, it works if you work it, which I'm assuming they're talking about the program of Alcoholics Anonymous or the 12 steps, I guess. I don't know that anyone's ever asked that question.
Okay. So it's a chant at the end. So the prayer should be sufficient.
Right.
Yeah, we should stop at the end of the prayer.
But each group is autonomous, so there you go.
Well, they are, Shank. That's the
Right.
beauty of Alcoholics Anonymous. Well, so Julia already scrapped it.
She did. I think that was almost a super scrap.
It was
Almost.
close to a super
What does
scrap.
that mean?
Well, the guest can go in on a scrap quick, like just scrap it, and then we'll call that a super scrap, and we'll just move on.
Hmm.
But we don't tell them that because until they do it. And you were close.
You were close, pretty close.
All right, I'm scrapping it, Shank.
It's out of here. I'm scrapping it.
All right,
Three for three. They're out of here.
3 for
There we
3, scrapped out. Although I want you to start using push, JC. You got to weave it into a
try.
share one time. Just weave
I'll
it
try.
in.
Mm-hmm.
All
I'm
right.
chairing tomorrow. I'll do it.
All right. Perfect. Hey, that could be a topic. Just tell them, hey, we're going to forego the format tonight. And I found out I got new information last night that's going to just revolutionize your recovery. And
Yes.
just say the topic is push. That would be awesome.
Oh God.
All right. Julia, we appreciate you coming on and sharing your experience with us.
Thank you guys so much for having me.
Yep. It's been great. And if you're out there, remember, if you're young, take the 12 steps and be free. Thanks for listening. If you have a comment, suggestion, or just need help, you can email Shank and Wayne at freedom@alcoholicsalive.com. Remember, we're recovered members of Alcoholics Anonymous, but we do not speak for Alcoholics Anonymous, nor do we get paid. Join us next week for another great episode.